Hello, and welcome back to another episode of Critical Reactions with your host, Bryan. We're going to wrap up this week's theme of some of your favorites of 2024 with Laura Marling. Marling? Laura Marling. Just pretend I said that right the first time. The song's called No One's Gonna Love You Like I Can. And what I find interesting about this is it's not even 2 minutes long. Now, I randomly selected these. I'm not playing favorites. I'm not trying to wrap the week up on a short song. Uh, but I was quite surprised when I rolled the dice, picked the five songs out, and I was like, oh, this one's only a minute 59. That stands out to me. So let's see what Laura does in just 2 minutes. Maybe it's a very impactful short track. Let's dive in.
You were taking off your clothes in a bar by the road when I thought no one's gonna know you like I know.
I like the piano tone.
No one's gonna know you like I know. You were saying something strange just to make me misbehave. I thought no one's gonna say it like you say. No one's ever put it quite that way.
Ooh. The flourish plus the minor melodic shift there. The vocalization.
No one's ever put it quite that way. And we grew tired of making plans that kept slipping through our hands. And if life is just a dream, I'm gonna make it mean something worth a damn.
Interesting phrasing there too. Hanging on to that just a little longer.
No one's gonna love you like I can. No one's gonna love you like I can. No one's gonna love you like I can.
Okay. You know what? That was gorgeous. Simple, effective, straightforward, but gorgeous. The thing that stands out to me the most is that it does sort of have an A B format to it. We have a line, and then no one's going to blank like I can. And then another line, and then no one's going to do a different thing that I can. And so we do have this pattern that crops up. But I think more importantly is that when we look at it musically, there isn't patterns, there's motifs, sure, expansions on ideas we've heard before, but it's linear. And I think if you're going to make a 2 minute song, linear is the way to go. You're going to want to have maximum impact at every moment. And I feel like repeating things, you just don't have time for that. Imagine a 10 or 15-minute short film. You're going to try to get all three acts. Well, actually, for 15 minutes, you're probably just going to go for a single act, really condense it down. But you don't have time to repeat yourself. You don't want to give any extra information than you have to. You need to make every shot, every scene, every line of dialogue matter. Because if it doesn't add to it, then you're subtracting what from something that could have replaced that. And I feel the same way about music. If your song is not even going to be 120 seconds long, every note, every word is going to matter. If you choose to repeat things, it needs to have impact. And just playing a verse, chorus thing doesn't have impact usually. This is the smart thing to do for a short track. And I love it. It has motif. It has patterns to it. There's an element of growth, but there's also this cyclicality to it, but it's also linear and it folds in on itself and it's both at the same time and I think it's lovely. It's also paired with some beautiful writing, not just the structure of it, but the composition itself. When we listen to the piano, first of all, fantastic tone. I don't know how they achieved this. I don't know what piano they're using. It sounds old. Maybe it is an expensive piano that's been kept up, but it also feels like a family piano. Just kind of sits in the corner, gets played every once in a while. It has that, I don't know how to describe it. It doesn't feel clean, it doesn't feel proper, and also it kind of doesn't feel maintained enough, sure, to keep the tone, but not something that you have someone coming out every month to work on, to ensure that it's properly tuned and that all the strings are at the right tension and all of this stuff. My grandmother still has a piano at her house, completely untuned. I don't think anybody has touched it up or maintained it at all in the last probably decade or decade and a half. I go over there and play it sometimes, though. Sure, some keys are out of tune, but it still sounds good on the majority of the piano. But it has a character to its timbre, the way that the strings vibrate, the way that the mallets hit the strings. There's a softness to it all. I hear that here as well. And maybe that's just the characteristic of this. Maybe it is a really expensive, well kept piano that just happens to have a similar characteristic tone as my grandmother's old, unmaintained one. But it feels very homely, I think, is the word I'm going for. It doesn't sound professional in a lot of ways. I think part of that is also the production, the way that it is recorded, and maybe the lack of production put on it in post production, the lack of effects and EQing and some stuff, just little things to tweak it a bit, but nothing to remove that warmth that it already has. I also like the imperfections in the playing. Some of the keys you get a very clear attack, and others you don't. More of a resonant tone, like it was pushed quite a bit softer than some of the other ones. Not because of any purposeful dynamics, but just your finger slipped. You didn't give it all the pressure you wanted to, and it just came off a little softer. The little imperfections of human playing. One of the big differences between playing a piano and a keyboard, especially if your keyboard isn't weighted like mine. It doesn't quite have the action that a real piano does. You couldn't see it, but I played some keys on my keyboard like it was gonna help the video in any way if I did that while I said the words. Um, but that mixed with her vocals, I think, and again, sort of a raw production on the vocals. They just sound very live, untouched. I'm sure there's some minor tweaks. You gotta mix it. You gotta make sure it works well against the piano, but not a lot of change to it, I would wager. And the two of them, as quiet as they can be, they're boosted a bit. They take up more space than I feel they should given their volume, but they both feel very natural and kind of small. It's that intimate sound that I think works really well, particularly for the lyrics, which talks about these small moments. It's about the relationship between two people. That's it. Nothing more, nothing grander, just that. And so the production really sells that. But it's a little more than just the way things sound, too. The piano is, like I said, a core motif. We do get some expansion off of it. The violin eventually adds some extra harmonic weight, and we do have a different chord progression. I don't think we change keys, but we do go to a new progression um, somewhere towards the end of the song, probably in like the third quarter of the track or so. Um, But for the most part, the piano is not really changing much. It's the vocals that do a lot of changing. They come in rather straightforward with a simple melody. Eventually, though, we add flourishes to that melody where we just held a note originally. Now we might hit the note, rise up, and fall back down to it, landing back on it for, to stick the landing, to still have that resonant tone as our home, but having a little flourishy movement going into it. Eventually, as we get into the track, we begin to hold out these phrases a little bit longer. There is even one sentence that I pointed out that kind of went beyond where all the other ones stopped, going over 2.5 beats or so into the next bar. It's this expansion of ideas. It's what makes it feel alive, organic. It's constantly changing and evolving. I don't think any two lines are delivered identically on this, even though the general makeup of the melody is very similar from sentence to sentence. There's little flourishes, little catches, little extensions, or a note held out here where we didn't before. It makes it feel, like I mentioned, natural, as if this wasn't something completely rehearsed. Just, I wrote this poem down, I had this piano playing, and I'm just going to sing whatever comes to mind. And kind of a quasi improvised, quasi pre-composed idea. I don't know if that's actually how they went about doing it, but I think it's lovely. It allows all of these sections to feel interconnected, that they certainly feel like one song. The motif helps sell that, but it doesn't feel like something stuck in a cycle either. It is about movement, but on top of that, we take the base idea and we make it more complex every time, complex in different ways too. It isn't just about adding layers slow burn style, but we'll evolve it this way this time, and next time we get to it, maybe we'll work on this part over here. And to me, that reads as growth. What that growth is, I'm not sure. It could be the growth of the people, it could be the growth of their relationship, but the linearity of it, to me, reads as something that lines up with this relationship itself. Relationships can have cycles to them, sure, but I think on the whole, relationships tend to grow over time. There's something that have a defined start point and a defined end point. And this idea of linear movement and subtle growth over a strong foundation, to me, just reads as a story of a fantastic relationship between two people. The rises, the falls, getting back up, growing stronger over time, larger and more defined, but not afraid of the simple things. The song does end where it begins on some of the simplest ideas, that core motif again. It's just a gorgeous song to my ears that's only embellished by the fact that it isn't the same thing over and over. And it does make what I think is purposeful use of each moment of its short runtime. I'm going to look at the lyrics here. I picked up on, I'd say, most of them, but I do want to make sure I got the whole picture here. So I'm going to check that out. And then we're going to wrap this video up. Yeah, it's a straightforward song that just feels very wholesome and I think also earnest. It's not trying to be anything other than what it is. It begins with a couple of anecdotes as you were taking off your clothes in a bar by the road when I thought that no one's going to know you like I know. And you were saying something strange just to make me misbehave, and no one's going to say it like you say. No one's ever put it quite that way. This is where the turn happens, where we have our small harmonic shift. It says, we grew tired of making plans that kept slipping through our hands. And if life is just a dream, I'm going to make it mean something worth a damn. I like this. Basically says we tried to set everything up. We had plans and we tried to force them and just never worked. Why did we do that? We're just living life a bit more spontaneously now. It doesn't necessarily say that we are a rambunctious folk who are completely driven by id, but it does say that sometimes your plans need to be flexible. And also says that You know, if this life is anything worthwhile, if it's more than just a dream, we got to make it mean something. And so I'm going to love you like no one else. And that's going to make life worth living, at least for me as a narrator. And I really like that. It's a simple, simple song. Lyrically, very straightforward, but quite impactful. And like I said, I think the intimacy of the music, of being so small, just 2 to 3 instruments, and the plethora of small little vignettes followed by internal thoughts of how do I make my life worthwhile? Not necessarily trying to change the world or be anything big. I just I want life to be good. I want there to be more than just the grind, putting out music and being an artist. There's got to be something else to this too. Not saying that that's not worthwhile, but it says I want you part of my life. That's going to make things good. And that's it. It's a simple song. And so I think even from that perspective, that it just aims to be simple narratively, aims to be simple in focus and intention. The song being short and simple and sweet just lines up with that so much better. It was already great just listening to it and enjoying the music for what it was doing, but knowing the lyrics too. Yeah, it all clicks. It's very well done. I can totally see why this was picked for favorite song of last year. It's just, it's gorgeous, and sometimes that's all you need. A nice little sweet injection of beauty. These are my thoughts. Laura Marling's No One's Gonna Love You Like I Can. What do you think of this? Is there anything that stood out? Anything that you would like to add on to what I said or correct me on? Maybe you have your own thoughts or opinions on this, maybe your own interpretation. Please put any of that and any thoughts you might have on the song into the comments section. Above that, in the description box, you'll find a link to Linktree. It takes you here. You can find links to my music, ways to support the channel, a link to the Discord server, and so much more. Above that, if you could, like, subscribe, and ring the bell. I greatly appreciate all three of those. That wraps it up for today. I'll be back tomorrow, though, 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, 10 p.m. UTC as usual. We're going to check out an entire album. Also tomorrow, probably like 10 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. So was that like 3 p.m. UTC? I'm gonna put out my list of my favorite albums of last year. All right. Until next time, remember to be critical, not cynical, of the music you listen to, and have a fantastic morning, afternoon, or evening, whenever you choose to watch my videos.